Do you want to be ahead of the game for the latest in arts, music, cuisine, and entertainment across the Middle East's most dynamic capital cities? Al Monitor is proud to launch our City Pulse newsletters, focused exclusively on local news, starting in Riyadh, Dubai, Istanbul, and Doha. Each week, our on-the-ground writers in these cities cover the latest cultural happenings and trends, so you have everything you need to know for the best local experiences. To subscribe for free, go to almonitor.com, that's al-monitor.com, and sign up on our newsletter page.
Welcome back to the Al Monitor Brief. I'm Adam Lucente. This year's World Economic Forum featured a number of developments related to the Middle East. Asad al-Shibani became the first Syrian foreign minister to participate in the forum and pleaded with countries to invest in Syria. U.S. President Donald Trump made his first major international address since returning to the White House and called on Saudi Arabia and other OPEC members to bring down oil prices. My guest this week is Al Monitor Chief Business Correspondent Jack Dutton. Jack was at the center of it all and attended the forum in Davos, Switzerland, reporting on investment in Syria, the global energy transition, and more. Hope you enjoy. Jack, welcome back to the Al Monitor Brief.
Pleasure to be back, Adam. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thanks for joining us from Davos. We've been enjoying following your reporting there.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been quite cold. It was -2 earlier, which isn't actually that cold for Davos. Last year it got down, I think, to -16.
I assure you it's cold where we're recording this as well. So we're in the same boat.
Yeah.
So my first question is, there's been a lot said at the forum, but what have been the main takeaways related to the Middle East at Davos this year?
I mean, it's been a great turnout for the Middle East this year. Overall, there was over 50 heads of state, and you had delegations from all over the region, including from the Gulf. So the UAE had several ministers there, as did Syria. For the first time ever, had the foreign minister at Davos. So that was very interesting with the new government. Asad al-Shibani, and a lot of people wanted to speak to him for obvious reasons. And there was also representation from Palestinian territories, and also the Israeli President Isaac Herzog was there. And there was a lot about the conflicts in the region and the recent ceasefire, which was agreed on Sunday last week, the day before President Trump's inauguration in the US, and whether that ceasefire will hold and what are the conditions needed to keep that ceasefire and ensure stability. There was also a lot of talking about advancing the normalization talks between Saudi Arabia and Israel and what the conditions would be and whether that's more likely under the new US administration. And also the two other big themes as well. Sorry, I should say three, because it's the Lebanese ceasefire and whether that would hold, and the reconstruction, and Syria, as I mentioned earlier, the whole toppling of the Assad regime in December, and what the new government plans. And I guess Asad al-Shibani was there to kind of let everyone know that Damascus is back. And there was also a lot of talk about the Iran nuclear deal and whether the Trump administration would be open to a new deal. I interviewed the head of the Atomic Energy Agency, Rafael Grossi, that's the UN nuclear weapons and uranium enrichment watchdog. And when I spoke to him, he said that the Trump administration were keen on a new deal with Iran. However, it'd be a lot wider in scope than the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, which Trump famously withdrew from in 2018. So there was a lot of talking there, and there was also the economy piece. So there was a lot of talk about different Gulf countries, whether that's the UAE or Saudi Arabia, diversifying their economies away from a reliance on oil. So that was also a central theme.
Thank you. Definitely a lot covered. You mentioned Syria. I want to focus on that a little bit. It's Syrian Foreign Minister Shibani, he talked about, the country being open for investment. How much international interest do you think there is to invest in Syria at the present?
I think there's strong optimism from a lot of the delegates at the World Economic Forum this week. And I spoke with the WEF's head of Middle East, North Africa, Marian Keros, and he said that the Arab businesses he'd spoken to been very keen to resume operations in the country following the toppling of Bashar al-Assad's regime by militias in December. Obviously, the conditions have to be right, but there's definitely a lot of interest. Shibani, I noticed, basically said called on the international community to start removing some of the sanctions, specifically from the EU and the US, and that would be key to restoring stability in the country. And they need time. They've only 50 days, just over 50 days in power, and they're hoping to get some relief from the sanctions. And UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres also called for this. However, it's obviously a complicated process, but a lot of businesses are very keen to work with Syria, whether it's things like reconstruction of Syria, because there's obviously been so much damage after nearly 15 years of bloody civil war. So there's definitely a lot of interest, but it's now the ball is the government's got to show it can actually walk the walk, just rather than just saying the right things. And there needs to be different communities in Syria represented in this new government. And also, it'll be interesting to see what the EU and the US do in terms of like the discussions and the engagement, and whether we'll see any lifting of sanctions. And if we see that, we're likely to see investment come in, especially from the Arab countries in the region initially.
Don't go anywhere. We'll be back with Jack Dutton after this short break.
Today's transformation of the Middle East is at the center of global geopolitics. Whether you're an analyst, diplomat, executive, or academic, you need the best reporting and analysis to understand what's really happening on the ground and what it means for the world. Al Monitor is the award-winning independent leader in Middle East news. From Riyadh to Beirut, Abu Dhabi to Doha, and Baghdad to Tehran, our team of over 100 expert journalists report daily on the top stories driving the regional trends. Download our mobile app and subscribe to Al Monitor to follow what leaders and decision makers are reading every day. Go to almonitor.com, that's AL-MONITOR.com, and use promo code POD25, POD25 for a discount.
Okay, we're back. Jack, you've done a lot of reporting on the global energy transition, both at the forum and before. What do you think is the state of the global energy transition, and is it gaining momentum, or do you think it's slowing down?
Well, with the inauguration of Donald Trump, in his first few hours as president, he reversed a lot of key climate policies of Joe Biden's, including once again pulling out of the 2015 Paris Climate Agreement, which is obviously major reversal. And that obviously alarmed a lot of different countries in the world, and also domestically as well. Trump rolled back a lot of Biden's protections and restrictions on drilling for additional LNG and oil. And Trump's rhetoric as well in his speech to Davos today, which was his first major public speech in addressing the international community and other leaders since the inauguration, saying that he wanted OPEC, the organization of all exporting countries, which is kind of de facto led by Saudi Arabia, the world's biggest exporter of crude oil. And he was trying to say that OPEC should pump more oil and therefore lower the price of oil, because that would help stimulate markets. It would ensure energy security. And Trump even said it would end the war in Ukraine, because a lot of Russia's revenues are from the sale of oil and gas. That was quite a radical thing to say, to keep pumping more oil when the world has been supposed to be transitioning away from fossil fuels, and they're meant to be using less oil. But I spoke to quite a few different energy officials at the event this week, including the Director General of the Abu Dhabi-based International Renewable Energy Agency. And I asked him whether the new administration of Trump could derail this rollout of renewable energy. So at COP28 in Dubai at the end of 2023, one of the major announcements was by 2030, the world will triple its renewable energy capacity, which is an ambitious target. But from when I spoke to Francesco La Camara, the Director General of the International Renewable Energy Agency, he said, although Trump has came out with rhetoric which seems to suggest that he won't be that supportive, the case for renewables now is very compelling, because it's a lot cheaper than other alternatives like fossil fuels, like coal. And he believes that Trump understands the markets and he will see that there's a return to be made in these large solar projects, and he believes that they will continue to roll out renewables and it won't be derailed in that way. Obviously, it's still very early in the Trump presidency, and we'll need to see cooperation from the other major countries which contribute among the most to climate change, like China and Russia. But it's mixed messages, really. It seems like the pace of renewable investment is really accelerating. However, there's been a lot of doubling down on gas as countries which are victims or affected by the geopolitical instability, such as the Ukraine war, have had to turn to new sources for their gas and oil. So it's a mixed picture, but let's see how it goes. It's still quite early, as I say, in the Trump presidency, and let's see if the fast pace of renewable deployment continues for the year.
Jack, thanks so much for taking the time to speak with us from the World Economic Forum, and we look forward to more of your reporting.
Great, thanks for having me on, Adam.
Thanks for listening to the Al Monitor Brief. Follow Al Monitor for more on the stories impacting the Middle East.